He was once regarded as one of Hollywood's biggest action heroes, but after nearly 2 decades of silence, it looked like his career had reached a dead end. Then, without warning, shocking headlines revealed an enormous and unexpected new chapter that no one had predicted. Wesley Snipes achieved something so remarkable that it completely changes the story of a career long associated with missed opportunities and self-inflicted setbacks. So, what exactly led to this dramatic turnaround? Chapter 2: The Origins of a Hollywood Icon. Shaped by the streets of New York, Hollywood has always admired redemption stories, but Wesley Snipes' return goes far beyond an ordinary comeback. It feels like an impossible twist in the industry's own narrative. For more than 20 years, whenever his name surfaced in executive meetings, it was rarely connected to a new film project. Instead, it often served as a warning for rising actors about the risks of unchecked confidence and arrogance. He was seen as someone who had come within reach of the very top, only to watch it all slip away. Today, however, the conversation has completely changed. News outlets are buzzing after the veteran star emerged from years of cultural obscurity and stepped back into the spotlight of a modern, multi-billion-dollar entertainment franchise. In doing so, he made history by breaking 2 official Guinness World Records. But how does someone go from spending time inside a stark federal prison cell to becoming one of the most talked-about celebrities on the internet? To understand just how extraordinary this resurgence really is, we have to look beyond the image of the sword-wielding vampire hunter and examine the man himself. His story is shaped by deep psychological scars formed over a lifetime of living on the edge. Ironically, the same survival instincts that helped him rise to the top of Hollywood ultimately became the qualities that contributed to his downfall. Think about it for a moment. If you spent years being told you were unstoppable, wouldn't you eventually start believing that image yourself? Wesley Snipes certainly did. But that unwavering self-belief didn't begin on a movie set or inside a Hollywood studio. It was forged long before fame ever arrived. That story begins much earlier, long before the leather outfits, blockbuster films, and multi-million-dollar paychecks. To understand it, you have to go back to the unforgiving streets of the South Bronx, where Wesley Snipes developed the mindset that would shape his entire life. Although he was born in Orlando, Florida, Snipes was truly raised by the South Bronx during the 1970s, a time when New York City was both physically and mentally demanding. Growing up in that environment quickly taught him a simple lesson: either become stronger or risk becoming another victim. Wesley chose strength, finding it through martial arts, which would eventually become one of the defining parts of his identity. He devoted years to intense training, mastering disciplines that ranged from Shotokan karate to capoeira. Along the way, he built not only incredible physical ability, but also an impressive on-screen presence. Martial arts became more than a skill, it was his emotional armor, and he carried that same discipline, confidence, and focus into his acting career. When Snipes arrived in Hollywood during the mid-1980s, he caught the attention of legendary director Martin Scorsese, who cast him as the intimidating gang leader Minnie in Michael Jackson's iconic Bad music video. Later, when he portrayed the ruthless drug kingpin Nino Brown in New Jack City, he redefined what audiences expected from a powerful black leading man. The film exceeded every expectation, turning an $8 million production into a cultural phenomenon that earned roughly $47 million at the box office. By then, Wesley Snipes had firmly established himself as a major box office attraction. But his growing confidence soon evolved into something even bigger. As the new century approached, simply being one of Hollywood's biggest stars was no longer enough. He wanted complete creative freedom and the ability to shape his own projects. That determination eventually led him to a struggling comic book company facing financial collapse. Instead of merely accepting another acting role, Snipes would play a crucial part in reviving an entire franchise. Chapter 4: The Star Who Helped Revive Marvel. One fact is often overlooked in today's pop culture conversations. Marvel didn't rescue Wesley Snipes' career. Wesley Snipes helped rescue Marvel. Years before Disney purchased the company, and long before Robert Downey Jr. launched the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Marvel Comics was facing serious financial trouble. In 1996, the company filed for bankruptcy, and Hollywood largely considered superhero films to be risky investments. That perception changed when Wesley Snipes took on the role of Blade. When Blade premiered in August 1998, it became an immediate success. Carrying a dark, violent, R-rated story, Snipes demonstrated that comic book adaptations could become major box office hits while appealing to mainstream audiences. In doing so, he helped transform the industry's view of superhero movies. The film earned an impressive $131 million worldwide, giving new life to a franchise and proving that comic book characters could drive profitable blockbuster films. Because Snipes insisted on significant creative control and succeeded in getting it, he helped lay the groundwork for the multi-billion-dollar superhero movie landscape that dominates theaters today. At that point, he had reached the peak of his career. As a successful black leading man, he had earned enough influence to make one of Hollywood's biggest studios adapt to his vision. At least, that's how it appeared from the outside, behind closed doors. However, maintaining that position of power was beginning to wear on him psychologically. After all, when you're the star credited with saving a studio's fortunes, it's easy to expect that the studio will continue granting your every request. But Hollywood is famously unpredictable. By the early 2000s, the industry was changing, audience preferences were evolving, corporate priorities were shifting, and Snipes increasingly felt that the position he had fought so hard to achieve was slipping away. Those forces were about to collide, creating one of the most damaging chapters of his career. When production on Blade Trinity began in 2004, New Line Cinema was moving in a different creative direction. The studio wanted a lighter style for the franchise and introduced younger actors, including Ryan Reynolds, with hopes of launching future spin-offs. To Wesley Snipes, who believed he had carried Marvel's success on his shoulders, the shift didn't feel like a simple creative decision. Instead, he saw it as a deliberate attempt by the studio to push him aside and hand his franchise to someone else. Unsurprisingly, he made no effort to hide his frustration. Stories soon emerged from the set describing an increasingly troubled production. Reports claimed that Snipes spent long periods isolated inside his trailer, allegedly under heavy medication, and refused to communicate directly with director David Goyer. Instead, he reportedly exchanged only short post-it notes signed simply from Blade. Tensions reportedly escalated during an argument involving a black background actor whose shirt happened to display the word garbage. Believing the situation reflected racism, Snipes allegedly confronted Goyer in an explosive outburst, shouting at him and even attempting to grab him by the throat. The incident reportedly left the director so shaken that he hired a group of local bikers to serve as personal security on set the following day. The production became so difficult that, during one important scene in which Blade awakens on a morgue table, Snipes reportedly refused to open his eyes for the camera. As a result, the studio spent thousands of dollars using early 2000 CGI to digitally create open eyes during post-production. From Wesley's perspective, he believed he was defending himself against an industry determined to take advantage of him. In reality, however, he was distancing himself from colleagues and damaging relationships that had taken years to build. He later dismissed the strangling allegations in public, joking that if he had truly attacked Goyer, the director would not have survived to tell the story. Regardless of whether the rumors were exaggerated, the controversy severely damaged his reputation. His growing distrust of powerful institutions didn't end with Hollywood. That same mindset would soon influence decisions that carried far greater consequences, ultimately costing him millions and changing the course of his life. Chapter 6: Tax Troubles, Collapse, and Redemption. At the peak of his success, Wesley Snipes was earning tens of millions of dollars. But as his income grew, so did his resentment over the amount he owed in taxes. Around 2000, that frustration made him vulnerable to a persuasive organization known as American Rights Litigators, led by anti-tax activist Eddie Ray Kahn. The group introduced him to the so-called sovereign citizen ideology, along with a controversial legal theory known as the 861 argument. They convinced Snipes that income earned by U.S. citizens inside the country was not actually subject to federal income tax. Believing their claims, he fully embraced the idea, restructuring his production companies around the theory and stopping payroll tax withholding for his employees. In April 2001, Snipes went even further by filing an altered tax return requesting a refund of more than $7 million that he had previously paid for the 1997 tax year. In official correspondence with the Internal Revenue Service, he declared himself a non-resident alien to the United States and argued that the federal government had no legal authority over him or his finances. Convinced he had discovered a legitimate way to defeat the tax system, Snipes believed he would prevail. Meanwhile, the IRS was quietly building a detailed criminal investigation against him. Perhaps the most damaging aspect of the case was that Snipes wasn't merely someone who had accepted questionable advice, he actively promoted it. He hosted anti-tax meetings inside his own home, encouraging others to embrace the same sovereign citizen beliefs. During one of those gatherings, an employee named Carmen Baker questioned whether the strategy was actually legal. According to testimony, Snipes immediately ordered her to leave, telling her she was not playing along with the game plan. That moment became a significant piece of evidence for federal prosecutors, helping them argue that his actions were deliberate rather than accidental. The case was now firmly in motion, and the movie star, who had once seemed untouchable, was about to trade his trademark leather trench coat for a federal prison uniform. When the verdict was finally delivered in a federal courtroom in Ocala, Florida, it marked the collapse of the life Wesley Snipes had spent decades building. Although his attorneys successfully secured acquittals on the more serious felony conspiracy and fraud charges, the court still found him responsible for violating federal tax law. Snipes was convicted on 3 misdemeanor counts of willfully failing to file tax returns. The judge imposed the maximum sentence permitted for those offenses, 3 years in federal prison, bringing one of Hollywood's most dramatic rises to an equally dramatic fall.